I'm Amanda Rose. On Facebook, you can find me with my maiden last name. It's Amanda Rockwitz, Rachwitz. I became an anarchist around 2012, actually, and it was a really fast path from being a default Republican in 2011. I went down a bunch of internet rabbit holes that had to actually do with the history of the United States financial system. I know we all got there different ways, but that's where I started. And I ended up kind of questioning all my beliefs, and I got to libertarianism. And then I watched a video on YouTube called The Philosophy of Liberty. And the philosophy of liberty is something a lot of you might have seen. If you haven't, I recommend checking it out because it breaks down the exact concepts of individual self-ownership and then how rights all stem from that. And it does it very logically, and it uses these really cool animated images. It's very impartial in its imaging. It doesn't use like real images of real life people. It's very unbiased, and it has this awesome way it lays out the philosophy. And I watched that, and it was 8 minutes long, and it unraveled my brain like over the course of like 2 weeks or so. And I was applying the concepts in it to every one-on-one human interaction in my head I could think of. And I remember like a moment when it happened, because I was thinking, it got to a point in my head where I was like, is there any place where two individuals are having a consensual interaction that a third party with a badge and a uniform or whatever has the right to step in where it was not asked to? And then I realized no. And then I thought, well, that just logically dissolves everything conceptual that goes with the idea of government. That means government can't be legitimate at all. And at the time, I wasn't reading anarchist philosophy or anything. My brain was reaching for the label. Like, what does that mean I am? Like, where does that put me? And then my brain went to, wait, does that mean I'm an anarchist? Because anarchy was like this thing that meant like being punk rock and stuff when I was in high school. And it meant like chaos and weird stuff. So I thought, but why does the word anarchist come up? So it came up in my brain. So I'm like looking it up online. And sure enough, I find out that it just means no rulers. And I'm like, I think that's what I am now. And then sure enough, I started finding content on the web about it. And I actually found, before we were even friends or I knew him personally, I found Larkin's videos. And I was like, Larkin has all the words. Like, he has all the words for this. So I can frame this and discuss it and have a way to express what I see now. So what anarchism means to me is that you essentially believe in the principle of non-aggression, which just means you don't have the right to initiate force or aggression against an innocent person, and no one does. And that does away with the concept of ruling classes, because governments, to me, are just gangs. They're individuals pretending they have the right to coerce and defraud and extort and cage and kidnap people and kill them. So that's all the philosophy means to me, is no one person or individual gets to violate another person. And it does come down to consent. So the line of consent is what determines whether or not, you really, to me, it determines whether or not you see anarchism for what it is. If you understand that no one gets to violate another person's consent. Beyond that, we can all live, that philosophy, to me, like different ways. So one of the things that a lot of people tend to do is go, well, if you're an anarchist, you have to be into living like out, in a rural area off grid, and you have to be into sustainable farming, and you have to be into, and I don't subscribe to any of that, because it's really just the philosophy of, I don't believe in the ruling class. So if you live in a city and you're trying to make money and you're trying to not get robbed or caged or whatever, so you have a car registration so you don't get pulled over on the side of the road, and you try to make sure you're careful about how you do your taxes and information like that so that you don't get robbed. I don't believe in victim blaming. In other words, I don't think it's on the anarchist to try to run from all that, or they're not a real anarchist. It's like, you can live any way you want to. It's just about what you believe and what you're willing to act upon. So if you won't initiate aggression against anyone and you believe in only defensive force, you can live any lifestyle you want. You can love being in a modern city. You can love, making sure you carefully play the game to not get attacked by a ruling class, and you can want to stay there, or you can want to go and live off grid and be a total hippie. It doesn't matter to me. Anarchism allows for all types of people, all sizes, all flavors, all everything. There's no one way to be an anarchist. And my personal opinion is some people get caught up in that, and that doesn't really matter. That's not what defines anarchism. So kind of what Crystal had said earlier is we all kind of have different flavors and views on the philosophy, but because we agree on the main thing, that's what ultimately really matters. So yeah, that's what it means to me. It also does, for me, it includes how I parent. I parent differently. I'm definitely not a very authoritarian parent. I'm not necessarily a permissive parent, but I'm not an authoritarian parent. It's not like, do as I say because I said so. Just like a lot of the kind of responses I got from my elders and parents growing up. So that's anarchy in a nutshell for me. That's how I got there. So I've now been an anarchist for 11 years, which flew by fast. And then now I want to get into something I bring to the table differently here, that doesn't relate to that because we're all going into stuff about our lives. So I wanted to talk about music and singing, because music is a huge part of me. And when we're activists, we don't all get to see the parts of us that are not related to activism. And music has now gotten tied into my love of liberty and the anarchist philosophy. But it's still, it's one of those things where if I wasn't focused as much on trying to pay the bills and trying to spread the message of liberty, I would just be doing music all the time, 24/7. So let's go back a bit. When I was 2 years old, as soon as I could open my mouth, I was making noise. I was singing. And then my younger sisters came on the scene, and then I didn't stop singing. I sang around the house, and I wasn't good at first. I was just making noise because I like to sing. My parents or family were getting sick of me singing constantly. I would go in the car, I would go outside, or I would hide somewhere, and I would practice my singing anyway. And I didn't do anything with my voice publicly until my parents took me from homeschooling me at age 11 to throwing me into the school system for the first time. And I was in 6th grade by the school system standards, and it was a performing arts school. So they did the play Annie, and a bunch of you might remember the movie Annie and the redhead that sang really loud. And I was in such a tiny school that it wasn't necessarily that I was super great. It was that no one else could carry a tune, and I could. So they picked me to be Annie because I was like not shy, and I was like willing to belt it out. And I didn't have like singing technique. I didn't have like the ability to know how to sing from, it's called your diaphragm, like your solar plexus. I would sing from my throat. So I was soft. And the school principal also doubled as the music teacher. And his name was Mr. Weiler. I'll never forget him. And he unlocked my diaphragm voice. He was like, you need to learn to sing from here and project. So I go to do the school play, and I nailed it. I did a great job, but there was one problem. I succeeded at bringing out my loud voice. And then they put a lavalier on me, which is a mic that they hook onto you. And at one point I pretty much blasted their speakers. Like I almost destroyed the mains because I was in an auditorium and I was using my projection voice. So I was loud enough. It turned out I didn't need the mic on me at all. So he actually was like, later on, he was like, you were basically too loud. Like, I know I taught you to use your solar plexus, but oops, we didn't need to put the mic on you because you were too loud. And that gave me a lot of like confirmed good feedback, but I was very intimidated by all the attention. Everyone in the school, all the younger kids now knew me as Annie. They didn't know me as Amanda. So I would get rushed by these little elementary school kids going, Annie, for like the rest of the school year. And I was just like, I don't know if I like this. Like it was intimidating to me. Some people instinctively like that. And at the time I was like, no. So I sadly stopped using my voice publicly after 6th grade all the way until senior year of high school. And then I got brave and decided to join choir. And even then I was riddled with self-doubt, and it came from how my parents just behaviorally picking up self-doubt that they had. And I was very much mirroring that constant self-doubt. So it was like good feedback didn't matter. I was still like, I don't think I'm really good. I don't know that I can sing. And I go and I do choir class, and choir teacher's like, you're good. You need to sing. So I joined choir. And then And then at the beginning of the school year, my math teacher, I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a movie, you probably do, called School of Rock with Jack Black, and it made the idea of school bands like so cool. Well, my math teacher was a guitarist, a musician, and he wanted to be the next Jack Black that put together a school band. So of course he was like, I need to put together a band and I'm looking for a singer. And I'm at a different school at this point. I'm a senior now. And Mr. Fowler goes, we're in the middle of math class, by the way, and I'm in the back and I'm doing my work quietly. And he's always strumming on his guitar. And he's like, hey, Amanda, sing something for me. And any of you who've ever done singing know that like being asked to sing on command when you don't sing in public and you haven't done that is like just the worst. And he did this in class. So like it's quiet. People are like doing their math work. And I look at him like he has 5 heads, like, motherfucker, you think I'm really gonna like start singing? And he's like, you got to know a song. Come on, like sing something. And I'm looking at him like, no, I'm not singing on command for you. Like, no. And he's like, come on, I need a lead singer. I'm trying to start a school band. I got a guitarist. Your friend Ryan can play. And he's like, the Asian German girl, Jean-Gris, she's like an amazing drummer. And Jean-Gris is going to be my drummer. So I need a singer. So sing something for me. And I'm just looking at him like, part of me almost wants to, but I was so afraid. And he's like, do you know Sarah McLachlan's I Will Remember You? Like the little animal commercials that make you feel bad for the animals, and it comes on and she sings. And I said, yeah, I know that song. And he's like, okay, just sing like the first line, just sing that right there for me. He's like, and he strums and he does it. And I'm like, okay. And I like get out that line and he goes, all right, that's it. You're the lead singer of my band. And I was like, just gonna go crawl in a hole now. Like I was not actually okay with being asked to be the lead singer of the band at all. And then I had friends that I knew were really into the idea of being singers one day. I had friends in high school that had never done it publicly, but they told me they wanted to one day be singers. And I thought, I know them. This is going to cause an immediate problem. Like they're just going to be jealous in a not good way. And I'm going to get attacked for just being the lead singer of the band. And I was right. Like Mr. Fowler asked me to be the lead singer. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to be the lead singer. And then I had this drama start with 2 other friends of mine that were like, they didn't even know the band existed 5 minutes ago. And they were like, she stole this from us. And I was like, you guys are ridiculous. Like, I didn't know the band existed till 5 minutes ago. The math teacher asked me to be the lead singer. I stole exactly nothing from you. And then they realized what happened and they like came off of their BS and they were like, okay, we're sorry. And I said, come join in, be like backup singers if you want. Ask Mr. Fowler if you can be a part of it. I don't care. Like, he just asked me to be the lead singer. So it led to me doing a bunch of stuff through the course of high school. And we had like this blast, like the whole band formed. It was me doing a bunch of stuff through the course of high school. And we had like this blast, like the whole band formed. It was like the chintziest band name you could ever imagine. We were literally called We Are They. That was it. That was the band name. Like, I don't know why we came up with that. Don't know what the inspiration was. We were in a really eclectic group of people. We had a weird, awkward bassist who was like a super nerd and he was awesome. The drummer was she was this model looking Japanese German girl that kicked ass on the drums. And then we had like 2 awesome guitarists, and one of our guitarists was writing most of our songs because he was a really good songwriter. And then we would like share singing a bunch of the songs. So I wasn't even always fronting. Like sometimes I would just back up and let Tim or one of the other people front for the band, but I was like the main front person for it. So I did that. And then in church, I started to go onto my church to say, hey, I'm ready to like sing for the church band if you need someone. And church heard me sing. And so the church I went to at the time, I was a church girl. They were like, yeah, come on and sing. So I sang for them for like 3 years until I got sick of all of the church songs and didn't want to sing anymore. And then weirdly, I backed all the way off of all that. So I stopped going to church. I went through two marriages that one was semi-abusive and then the next one was super abusive in a whole creepier way. And as you guys might relate to a little bit, life just sort of knocked me off track of following my own dreams. And I bought into so much of the BS that the world tells you, just like, you have to be practical, you have to make money, you have to do the thing that brings in, whatever makes you able to survive. Arts don't do that. So you have to just go put your butt in a desk and make money. And so I just stopped doing all the stuff with my voice. And this was in my early 20s. And then I met Larkin partway into not partway in, most of the way through my abusive marriage. I met Larkin and I befriended him. And then we accidentally fell in love through the course of him trying to help me with my marriage and me starting to realize the guy I was living with wasn't actually a good person. And here's this guy over here who's trying to help me with my marriage and is actually a good friend. So the shift in feelings started to happen because it was like, wait a minute, I can't help this thing. This guy's a psycho. And then I have this good guy over here who doesn't ever think he'll maybe be able to be with me, but now we're in love and he's still trying to help me out. So it was actually through Larkin that I found out he was a big into music and he'd been writing songs for ages, but he hated his voice. He's like a composer. And he was like, my dream has always been to have a good female singer that I can like do music with. And she'll sing some of the stuff I write, or we can write stuff together. He's like, cause I love to write music, but I don't like my voice. I like women voices. And I was like, that's kind of convenient. So then we got together. And I found out while he was in prison, when the federal government threw Larkin in prison, he wrote an entire music album, like a whole rock album, and the world's never heard it. So one of the things we're going to do is eventually flesh out that whole album, only I will be singing all of the words that he wrote. And then he reminded me of all this poetry and songwriting, like lyric writing I did when I was in my teens. And that like woke back up the ability to like hear lyrics in my head and hear ideas for songs. And then for the first time, I think after we fell in love in like 2014, it was 2014 to 2015, I started hearing melodies in my head, like things I'd not heard before. And it took me a minute to realize I'm hearing something in my head, but that's not a song. That's not a thing I've heard on the radio. And so I went to Larkin and I was all excited and I was like, I hear it. I hear a melody and I don't know how to capture it because I don't remember how to play the piano. I did that for like 2 seconds when I was 6. And I don't remember how to play the violin. I did that for like 9 months when I was 11 years old. I can't put the melody anywhere, but it's in my head. And he said, send it to me. So I sent it to him and I hummed the melody and that was it. And he's like, that's a really good melody. And I said, can you orchestrate a song around that? And he was like, yeah, I can, because he's a composer. So he started going to his musical composing stuff. And he was like going to his workstation and he was building out the song. And then I started hearing lyrics to it. And I would describe songwriting for me as it's less about trying to make up and create something and more about listening for it in the universe. It's literally like a channeling thing for me. So different musicians will describe songwriting differently. Some people are very conscious about it. They choose every word and it feels like they're making it up. And then others will describe it as, I don't really make it up. I listen for it. And then it like comes to me. And that's what music is for me. It like comes to me and it does that. So we actually, Larkin and I released one song on all the music platforms last year, or actually no, 2021. And that was all Larkin's writing, his lyrics. And I just came in and did the vocals on it. And it was kind of related to the scamdemic thing that happened the last few years and people waking up. It was from the point of view of someone brainwashed, starting to see the lies. And that song is called The Beast Behind. And you can find it on, The Beast Behind is on all of the music platforms like Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, iTunes, all of that. And then we just released the song Dawn of the Free. That's actually the intro of it is for this, the intro of our pre-recorded thing. And Dawn of the Free is not yet on all the platforms, but that's just because we have to do an artist image. All the music platforms require you to upload like the image that goes with the song to represent it. And we have to do that super professional, good looking. So we're going to be picky about that. Once we do that, the song itself is ready. So right now the song's on YouTube as a lyric video. It's only on YouTube. You can find Dawn of the Free there. And Dawn of the Free is cool because that wasn't all just Larkin. Dawn of the Free started in 2017. We performed a simple version of it at Anarcho-capitalist 2018, both of us on the piano side by side. And then later Larkin was like, well, I can compose this into a much more complex song. And see, he had written it simpler so that we could both perform it on piano. And I am a beginner pianist and he is a pro pianist. So like he's good at it. And I'm like just barely getting to where I can play with both hands. So he wrote it real simple. And then in the last year, he blew it up into this huge orchestration. It's like 32 parts. And then I wrote the lyrics and the melody in 2017, but then I expanded the lyrics and we added a whole section of the song this last year. And that was insane because I had like creative block for a minute. I don't know if you guys have ever struggled with trying to go to create something and you're so picky and obsessive about it being right that you just kind of go, oh crap, I don't know if I can do this up to my own standards, and it creates a block. And so I was basically so stressed about perfectionism that it took me too many months to write this last chunk of the song. But when I finally got it out and the creative block was gone, I was like, yes, this is perfect. So we released Dawn of the Free just a little bit ago on YouTube. We are going to get it out to all the platforms. And back when society told you music doesn't do anything, or you can't do that, you have to get famous or you don't make money, that might have been true then. But now, as most of you know, independent music lets people home record their stuff in their studio and upload it to these music platforms independently as they want to. Nothing stops you from doing it. So I'll explain how we do it. Instead of going and getting 150 accounts on all these different music platforms that exist, we go to one website that does that for us. A website that called cdbaby.com. And CD Baby used to deliver independent artists CDs to people. That's how they started out back in the day. Now what they do is you upload your home recorded, studio recorded piece to them, and CD Baby like vets it for quality. They like clear it. And then when they clear it, they automatically put it out to all 150 plus music platforms that now exist, because we can't even keep track of all of them. So like, I don't have to go and make an account on Spotify and Pandora and iTunes and Amazon Music and SoundCloud. CD Baby just goes, cool, Dawn of the Free checks out, boom. And it's on all of them. You can find it anywhere. So that's how we did The Beast Behind. We submitted it to CD Baby and then they put it up. And now I'm starting to get back into the mode of, okay, for fun, it would be cool to actually perform again, even though I don't like performing all the time. I do like recording at home more. It's more intimate and more fun to me. There's something about sharing my music with a crowd because for me, it's a bonding experience with people. Like I connect through the soul when somebody relates to what I'm singing and what I'm feeling. So it's like, it bypasses all of that nervousness, all of that facade people wear. Like my inner introvert can feel weirdly safe with people when I'm on the stage in singing mode and they're just enjoying what's coming out and they're like in the mode of, this is cool music. Like that's a connection for me. So we're considering getting a few songs more out on the platforms and then trying to figure out how to go to like small little coffee shops, cafes, musical like clubs and bars and stuff, and like performing again once we have like an actual set formed of like stuff that we've written and done together. And both The Beast Behind and Dawn of the Free are about freedom, are about basically the philosophy of freedom in some way. So Dawn of the Free is really deep for me and makes me cry singing it or thinking about it too much, because it's quite literally about the trajectory of mankind starting off just buried in the belief in authority for thousands of years. But that little spark of freedom inside of us that's been fighting to come out in the form of these few individuals just struggling and fighting against control freaks and authority for so long. And it even sort of indirectly mentions that it's basically control of information that extended the reign of control freaks for too long. But once enough of us who wanted freedom were able to expose that lie that authority is, that claim, that started to dissolve them. And it's like filled with hope. The music sort of takes you through that, like, we fought for this, it was this struggle, and we're coming out of it now. And it's like sort of this challenging thing, like you can't stop humanity. You can bring your infantry and your war machine and you are not going to stop freedom. So yeah, that's my story about music. And also, if I was going to end with anything to others, is just to say, if there's an artistic dream you have, I didn't ever get professional voice lessons. I built my voice from the ground up, and now professionals are like, whoa, you're really good. Like, where'd you get voice lessons? And I'm like, I didn't. Had to do this the long way. It took me my whole life. So just whatever your creative outlet is or whatever you love doing, Even if you have self-doubt, keep going. Even if you think you're not that good, keep going. And even if you think you don't have money or resources to pull it off, keep going. And then the last thing is push out of your comfort zone. Cause I had to do that like over and over and over again, even when I didn't believe in myself, you know, even when I was afraid of fucking up on stage and hitting a wrong note, I had to be like, well, if I'm ever going to keep doing this for a living or going to get better, I have to just go for that high note and see if I can nail it. So that's my encouragement. I think that leaves me with being done for now. So I think I'm good.
I personally became an anarchist it was about 2014. It was during the Obama era. I was a libertarian. And then I met my other half, funny enough, in a Facebook group. And he was already an anarchist. And he kind of challenged my beliefs a little bit with libertarianism. I was a big L libertarian. And it was also through friendly debate that he kind of, because he challenged my perception a little bit, it woke me up to anarchism. I founded Anarchist Beauties in 2016. And its purpose originally was to meme pretty girls to spread the idea of anarchism. It has since grown tremendously, and we decided to take it up a few notches. And with this podcast and the upcoming website, that'll have blogs and vlogs for various genres like liberty, homeschooling, gentle parenting, entrepreneurship, homemaking, cryptocurrencies, recipes, and even a teen corner that is by teens for teens, and a kids page that will have like book suggestions, arts and crafts, printables, just all kinds of stuff for the littles. I personally am a freelance virtual personal assistant and also a stay-at-home mom. Being a stay-at-home mom is my passion. My kids are my world. If you're on my personal Facebook, you know that about 99% of my posts are my kids. They're my best friends. They're literally everything. So to me, anarchism is, I just try to keep it really simple. Don't hurt people and don't touch their stuff. That's the anarchist philosophy to me. Obviously voluntarism and consent, don't violate other people's consent. But really that's just what it comes down to is don't hurt people, don't touch their stuff. This also comes into me being a gentle or peaceful parent advocate. This idea of voluntarism and consent absolutely applies to children. And again, this is my passion, is my children. They're my whole life. So the gentle parenting is something I feel very strongly about. This also is frequently confused with permissive parenting. Gentle parenting, that comes hand in hand with teaching your children boundaries and learning to respect boundaries. Permissive parenting is where you give your child whatever they want and let them do whatever they want, and that is absolutely not gentle parenting. That, in my opinion, is borderline neglect. Gentle parenting is, like I had mentioned, you have to have a level of respect for your children that you would give to yourself or any other adult. If you don't eat that nasty food, why are you going to make your child eat a food that's nasty to them? I mean, you don't want them to eat junk food, no. But why are we holding our children to higher expectations than what we would hold ourselves to? That's like my biggest thing. And also, I'm very, very strongly against spanking of any kind. You do not have to hit your child to get your child to listen. Even parents who have been so far out in permissive parenting or even authoritarian parenting where your child is absolutely not listening, it's never too late to back it up. It is never too late to stop and listen to your child and to fulfill their needs. Would it take some work? Yes. Does it take trust? Yes. Does it take patience? Yes. Does it take love? Absolutely. Does it take being firm? Yes. You need to learn to say no to your children and uphold that no. And you don't have to hit them to say no. So next is that I also homeschool / kind of unschool my children. There are a lot of godforsaken regulations in New York State. So because of that, while I say unschool, there's only so much unschooling that we can do. However, it's still structured in a way. It's structured to what works for our family. So that's another thing that I'm very passionate about is homeschooling and the homeschool community. We are big fans of the Tuttle twins in our house. That's how my children were introduced to liberty, of course, besides hearing what me and my other half talk about. We are big on, we want them to think critically. We don't want them to just repeat what they hear. We want them to have their own opinions and their own thoughts, and we support that. And again, my biggest passion, my kids, because they are my greatest gift to this world. They are going to be the ones that take over someday when I'm gone. And they are the most important ones to teach voluntarism to, because they are going to be the ones who are going to continue breaking these generational curses. When I say a generational curse, I don't mean necessarily just the type of parenting, but the only way that we are going to change the world is by changing where the world starts, and that's at home and with your children. I think a lot of people really forget that these little people are people, even if they're little. The other thing that I wanted to mention and touch on too is that I am a big fan of cryptocurrencies. You'll see me post that a lot on Anarchist Beauties. This is not to say that I don't like gold or silver. I like gold and silver. But I also like cryptocurrencies. I love technology. I'm interested by AI. All of that stuff just really intrigues me. And I really wish that I wanted to add to that. I really wish that Lexi could have made it to our event because she had brought up what beautiful actually means. And I would like to define that here, is that when we say anarchist beauties, even though, yes, we're all beautiful, beautiful is our philosophy. Our very lifestyle is what makes us beautiful. We're changing the world one person at a time, or many people at a time, like Amanda and Lily when she comes on, and Brittany. You guys are changing many lives at a time. Mine, I'm changing little lives, but I'm here. But again, that's the definition of anarchist beauties. Is that's a philosophy in itself. Is it's just beautiful. And I think that's where I'm going to cut off, because I'm a terrible speaker, but I promise over time I will get better.
Okay, so it's me. Yeah? Okay. I think that Luna is giving herself not enough credit, and I'm sure all of the women here can agree with me on that. She is an incredible connector, and that is an essential part of having any village, whether that's Anarchist Beauties or anything else. Like, there are people that their special and unique talent is saying, I know all these people fit together in some way, in some beautiful way, and that is a special skill to be able to recognize and understand that. So I just wanted to give her amazing credit for that, for bringing us all together as humans, and also watching what she's been through with her children and what she goes through with the state that she lives in and what she's gone through in her life just to survive her pregnancy. And I've just watched, from the internet, her strength and her ability to become a soft potato instead of letting the world turn her into a hard egg with the difficulties in her life. And I think it would be a mistake for us to not address that on our first video, because none of us would be here together without her. And I would never have been inspired to start my own anarchist page without her. It was watching her own growth. Like, all she was doing was just pushing out the anarchist message. And I saw that was gaining a lot of traction. And I was like, wow, like, all she's doing is, she's not even trying to be like, hey, we have to be super sexy or anything. She's just like, people want to see this and they want to believe that it's beautiful and can be mainstream. So that was super inspiring to me as a human. And that's totally why I'm here on this platform with you guys today. So my story is really odd. I grew up super conservative in a military family. I had very conservative worldviews. Thankfully, we were the government skeptic type of conservative, so I did at least have a little bit of that in my back pocket. I did have the inherent worship, though, of the police and the military, so not the best. I went as far as starting my own college's chapter of college Republicans. So that's how entrenched I was at some point in conservative philosophy and, really Republicanism. I don't really think I even understood anything about conservative philosophy, to be honest. But that's where my adventure sort of started. Is I was really involved in that. And I was seeing how politicians were becoming degraded. People were getting into office saying they were going to do one thing and then completely changing their position. And we see that all the time in politics. And so I was very disillusioned by politics in general, like a lot of people become. And I realized that the conservative Republicans that I had in my life were kind of hardened, narcissistic assholes. And I was like, maybe there's something wrong with this philosophy in general, because it's churning out these overly Christian, judgmental assholes. And that's who they were in my life. I know lots of lovely conservatives now, but back then that was my frame of reference. I was just a goldfish in a bowl of Jesus-y folks. And I decided that I wanted to see the world a different way. I bought a Russell Brand book. And at that point, he was kind of a communist. And he had a video that came out in like 2012, 2013, that was basically like, I'm not voting because there's nobody worth voting for. And I was like, this is sacrilege. And the people started to be like, you're just apathetic. And he's like, that's not apathetic. I'm saying I care so much that I'm not willing to vote for someone who doesn't represent me. And that was really my first foray into thinking about the idea of emphatically and caring and having a caring disposition for your apolitical ideology, because I was like, he cares, but he doesn't want to use it in this way. And he was an all-out communist. So I was like, what he's saying makes a lot of sense. Like, we should care for each other. We should take care of each other. Single moms and old people shouldn't struggle. And so I would say I spent 2 weeks as an anarcho-communist. I always joke about it. I was like, we just need to take care of each other. Like, why can't we all just love each other? And also, I now know that's partially the divine feminine. We just are over nurturers. We need some of that masculine energy. So I would have totally taken the world down with my overt nurturing if it was up to me. And then I got very lucky. A close friend of mine, we're not even friends anymore because his girlfriend feels so threatened by me. I guess it's now his wife and the mother of his child. Don't know where he even is in the world, but he removed me from his life, but not before sending me the video for the intro to The Most Dangerous Superstition by Larkin Rose, whose wife is also on this call. And that video changed my life. I listened to it and was like, oh, wow, this is everything I believe. And I just knew immediately this is the logical position to take, because all of my values, no matter what they are, we need to take care of people, we need to help people, all these things, they all fit under this idea that the problem is we can't have elitists telling us what to do and a parasitic class of people that are absorbing the financial profits of normal, hardworking folks, and then deciding how to spend that money and what to do with people and who to put in cages for what reason. It became very clear to me that that's not something we could do. Bought the book Most Dangerous Superstition, fell down the insane rabbit hole of watching Larkin Rose videos, which I don't know if any of you can relate to that, but man, it's quite the adventure. There's lots of hours of content. And so I did that. I was the only anarchist I really knew because my friend who introduced it to me, basically, I was cut out of his life very soon after that. So I joined all the anarcho-capitalist community because I knew I wasn't a communist. So I was like, well, what's the other thing you can be? So I was like, okay, I guess I'm an anarcho-capitalist. I don't identify that way anymore. It's the incels that pushed me out. But anyway, I found this group and I got a lot of attention because I was a semi-attractive woman being like, hey, tell me about who I should be reading about. Like, all I know right now is Larkin Rose, and I'm fascinated by this ideology. And so I started reading Rothbard. I started reading Mises. am I pronouncing that right? I don't even know. I started learning about Austrian economics. I don't think anybody knows. I started just learning sort of the school of thought that kind of comes along with once you stop believing in the government, kind of it creates a vacuum. And so what do? How do we guide ourselves? And so I started learning about that. I already had an intense distrust of the government after my daughter, and I decided not to vaccinate. That was a huge part of pushing me into doubting that anything that the government said was true or valuable, because once you realize you can have a child with an intact immune system that can fight all types of germs, and you know that you yourself were a sick child and their biological father was also a very sick child, and then you have this perfectly healthy child, you're like, maybe it's not genetics. I don't know. Maybe it's the injected poison. So after discovering that sort of in congruence with the belief system that was kind of shattering underneath me with all this new literature that I was opening myself up to, I was just super obsessed with anarchism in general. I was making a lot of anarchist friends. And one thing I can say about the anarchist community, the libertarian community, as much shit as we get for being at each other's throats about our micro differences, we're a very welcoming community. So if you meet someone and you find out, oh, we're both anarchists or we're both libertarians or we both have based thoughts, you're like immediately someone that someone wants to talk to. Like if we both watch Jordan B. Peterson, like now we're besties, it's like we have this shared language. And it's something that I missed about being a Christian was like, I really like that we both had these ideas and that we could just come together and immediately connect on these grounding beliefs. And so anarchism gave me that. I had all of these beliefs that I shared in common with these people, and they immediately were like, you can be a part of this. Like, you're welcome to be in it with us, which is really awesome. A lot of my personal growth as a human for not thinking I was just a rejected loser came from being an anarchist, because I always felt like I didn't fit in. I was too much. All the same stories that a lot of people have. I was super bullied, and finding anarchism and being sort of the unusual, because like maybe I'm just like a mainstream normie 7. I'm like an anarchist 12. You know what I mean? So that's real cool, because then you get like a lot of attention for no reason, but it's fun. It's like winning an award at the Special Olympics. But I really appreciated being so welcomed by this community. I paid to talk to Larkin Rose, which is a great story too. That's how he and I became friends. Was I literally paid him to talk to him. He was like, hey, anyone want to like chat about anarchism for money? Is because he'd be a type of person who's, trying to actually live out his principles and pay his bills, which is difficult. And I was just like a struggling single mom, but I was like, this is something that I really want because I admire this person so much. And he was like, I just feel so guilty that I took your money because you're so wonderful. And his woman also was like, I'm making him charge because he doesn't want to, and he feels really guilty about it. And it was great. I'm happy that he took my money. I've gotten that much value plus from the friendship now. So definitely was worth that minimum investment in knowing him as a person, getting to know Amanda as a person, getting to witness their relationship, which is a beacon of true love in a world that is very sad and full of a lot of brokenness and weird partnerships that don't make sense. So getting to witness that with them and getting to be in Larkin's movie and, spend time with them has been a huge part of my growth as an anarchist. And it's what's grounded me in the fact that like anarchists are good people. Because on the basis foundation, like, of course, there are bad anarchists, just like there's bad anyone else. But the basis of the philosophy is that, like Luna said, don't hurt people, don't take their stuff. And so if you're out there really living that way, you're going to get back to you, and you are going to give a different type of energy, in my opinion. And that's been my experience with anarchists. They've been very giving to me, kind to me. And since creating my Anarcho MILF page, I've had just unlimited, yes, the simps, but just like unlimited, just like outpouring of people being like, wow, you're, really educated about these topics. Like, this is so cool that there's someone doing this. And I think that's kind of my place in the anarchist movement. I have 2 kids that I homeschool, and I have a lot of things that align me with the anarchist ideology, but I think my place here is to say you can just be a regular girl who dyes their hair blonde and gets their nails done and lives and breathes and works in a community, looks like a normal person, you might see her at a bar with like a low cut shirt and think she's hot, but she has the ideas of there shouldn't be a state and I wish there weren't cops in this bar. Like she's the one thinking that. And that is unusual for people. And actually my boyfriend told me that I was anomalous, which I really love. And I think that like being that is really special to me. And it's something that used to make me feel separate from others. And anarchism and my anarchist friends and my anarchist beauties have made me feel like that gives me a sense of belonging instead of making me an other, which is really nice. The two things I'm most passionate about that I feel like fall in line with my base ideology is I am a homeschool mom, and I never wanted to let the state or anyone raise my children. I really thought that there is this deep, meaningful, connective aspect of mothering that I needed to be involved with my own children. I became a single mom when my oldest daughter was 1.5. At some point in that first 6 months of becoming a single mom, I crawled into my car, my piece of shit Honda car in the Florida heat. And I crawled into my car. She was upstairs napping in our apartment. And I called in my car and I called my mom and I said, I don't want to be here anymore. And she was like, what do you mean? And I was like, I don't want to do it anymore. And she's like, what? And I'm like, any of it. Like, I really wanted to die. Because I felt this insane pressure to be there for her and be the sole provider of her love and nurturing. But we live in a real world where you have to be able to make money and survive. And that was scary for me to think about doing on my own, because growing up, I idolized stay-at-home mothers. Like, I thought that was the best thing that you could possibly be. I also wanted to go to college and get an education because I thought I was brilliant, but I always felt this drag on me to like, and this pull to like be a mother. Like, it was just called to me. The first man that was like, let's make a baby. I was like, all right, didn't even make sure he wasn't an abusive piece of shit, just was like, oh, I really want to have a baby. So, and then, going through that and finding a way through, because, right, it's like you can't go over or around a hard situation. You just got to go through it. So I was like, what can I do where I can stay with her? My car was like breaking down. I couldn't be nannying anymore. So I was like, what can I do? So I opened my first business, which was a home-based childcare in an upstairs apartment in a not very great neighborhood. And I had this deep belief that like I was a good person and I was a quality person, and that people would want their children around a good quality person. And I had a child development background and all these things, but I still felt like it would be a hard sell because I didn't have a lot of stuff. I didn't have really super nice toys. I didn't have like a really nice place, but I cared a lot. And I really believe when Jordan B. Peterson says nobody gets away with anything, that also the reverse of that is true. Like, good people, what they deserve comes to them, and I really feel like I was able to find clients because my heart was in the right place. I really wanted to do right by people. I really wanted to do right by my kid. And through that, I was able to find a husband who took in my child completely as his own. We're now divorced. He still loves my child. I've never been to court for either of my children. I have one ex that, my daughter is now 9.5. So we've been separated for 8 years. I went through a divorce starting in the early 2021 that was finalized in January of 2022. And I have done nothing with the court at all. There's no court enforced child support in either relationship because I don't believe in using force, period. Like, it's my principles. My principles guide me. And I feel like in the end, I haven't gotten fucked over by doing that. There's been times where I've wanted to, like, wow, it'd be a lot easier if I had extra money coming in, or I got what I was entitled to in my own brain. But at the end of the day, if you really believe something, you live it out loud. And so I started a business, a homeschool business that grew from my home childcare business with my daughter, who was getting older. She wanted more friends that were elementary age. The pandemic occurred. I started a homeschool co-op called Freedom Homeschool Friends. And it's literally about freedom. It's about a non-coercive environment that doesn't judge, that doesn't shame, that doesn't force kids into certain ideologies. We do a lot of Tuttle Twins. We do a lot of investigating the world around us and practical life skills. The kids recently developed a business plan to have a lemonade stand. We lent them, we seeded them capital so that they could get the ingredients. They paid us back. They decided what to do with their profits together. they voted and decided, and they all agreed that they would agree to the outcome of the vote, regardless of whether they liked it or not. And it was just a really beautiful, example of what can happen when people are left alone to just organize themselves, and just like a microcosm of that. So it's been a super beautiful experience being involved in that. And the other thing I'm really passionate about that I feel like falls in line with my belief system is I think a lot of people are easily brainwashed because they're addicted to sugar and grains. And when you're eating a poor diet, it's really hard for you to think outside of like, when's the next time I'm going to eat? And, I need to follow, like in the same way people follow propaganda, they follow commercialized food. So like, I have to get McDonald's because that's what's on TV. And it's delicious and I like it, and they're always sort of moving from snack to snack to snack. And the idea that someone doesn't feel free to actually make conscious choices around food is scary to me, because I lived that lifestyle. I felt like I was trapped in the body I had forever. I thought I would never be thin enough to feel comfortable. I thought I would never, look at my face in the mirror and recognize myself, because I was just always so inflamed from the foods that I ate. So I started my business, Get Food Therapy, because I really do believe that there's a therapeutic process that needs to occur between people believing that they need certain comfort foods or need certain foods they grew up with or childhood foods, and they can change their mindset and learn that like you can actually be free from those tethers. And you can actually choose for yourself to nourish yourself from a place of love. And I feel like that's where my belief in anarchism comes from. It's a deep feeling of love for my fellow man. And I'd say I could never know what it's like to live in your body. And I could never know what to tell you to do with your next step and your next move and your next year of your life. It's not my job. I don't know what it's like to be you. And I don't want to use force to push that on you. Even with food, I don't want it to be out of force. I want it to be out of deep love and deep concern that you have for yourself, and that I can inspire you to have for yourself because I have it for myself. And I think that all of us do that on some level. We all have a passion that comes from our own love for the world and for society at large, and even for America. Like, I think all of us deeply want to see a freer place, and a place where more people get to experience life and not be imprisoned and not be pulled over and not have to worry about licensing in their car and all this paperwork that keeps people impoverished. We want to see a more flourishing world. So that's kind of why we're all here, I think. And I probably went over my 20 minutes, but that's me.
Okay, I guess I'm next. My name is Katie. I came to anarchy in a sort of roundabout way. I was raised in New York State, liberal, progressive, not deeply political. I was always very skeptical. I remember when Obama ran for office and I voted for him, but then I looked around at my fellow liberals and the amount of enthusiasm that they had seemed deeply naive to me. It was like, nobody liked George Bush. We all knew that the war in Iraq was a huge disaster. But I mean, they thought this guy was like the second coming of Jesus and the whole world was going to get better. And we were going to wake up with tulips sprouting out of rocks or something. And I was like, I don't know where you guys are getting this idea that this guy's going to save the world for us. I mean, we're still going to have to do some work if we want things to be good. It's not going to be, this guy's not going to do everything for us here. So I had skepticism there. And I had some friends who were libertarian, and I found that I kept going so far to the left that I was bumping into the right. And I was like, and then I would see other people on the left really being angry about libertarianism and denigrating these people. And I was listening to my friends who were libertarian, and I was thinking, they sound reasonable to me. They don't sound selfish. They don't sound evil. They don't sound like they want people to suffer. They just sound very common sense and reasonable. They sound like a common sense dad, kind of, to me. That's how it's reading to me. And so at one point, I remember I posted something on Facebook about that I was so disgusted with politics that maybe I would prefer anarchy to this. And when I used the word anarchy that time, I was not using it in a political sense. I didn't mean voluntarism. I meant chaos. I meant maybe we should all just walk away from this and try again because it's reached that point. And I think it was the war machine that was really making me think that. The fact that we were all paying money to attack people in foreign countries and ruin cities and cultures and museums and libraries and killing children made me feel so deeply upset that I thought maybe it would be better to throw all this away and take our chances with utter chaos and just see how we do, because this is a mess. And then some of my friends commented on there and said, anarchy doesn't have to mean chaos. Here are some different authors. Here are some different ideas. And so I looked into that a little bit and I thought, oh, okay, this is more principled and organized and less of, it's not chaos. It's something else. And then I had 2 children. I was a public school teacher, and then I moved into administration. And as a teacher, I was always more of a facilitator. I wasn't, here's what we're going to learn and here's how we're going to learn it. I was, what are your interests and how can I assist you in pursuing those interests? And so I was always drawn to alternative education programs, weird grant startups that people would try to do. Whenever there was a real alternative approach to education, I was right there saying, oh, let me try that. Oh, I want to teach that. Oh, that sounds interesting. And then I lost my job right after I had my second child, my daughter. And I decided to stay home with my kids and babysit, become a childcare provider. So I started looking into my options in New York, a heavily regulated state. And I found that I could open a daycare in my house, but the regulations were extensive. It would be a huge investment of time and energy and money that had nothing to do with me taking care of kids and everything to do with me filling out a whole bunch of paperwork and reporting it to the state. And I was like, this wasn't a philosophical position. It was a practical position where I was like, I don't want to do that. That sounds awful. But there was also a legally exempt option where you could provide childcare to 2 kids in addition to your own with no governmental oversight. So I said, okay, I'll start there. I did that for a year. I loved the work. I hated the hours and the working conditions, because when you do childcare, it's just you. You're working 10 to 12-hour days. When you go to the bathroom, you got people waiting outside. I had other people's children reaching their fingers under the bathroom door. Miss Katie, Miss Katie. I was like, oh, Lord. And by the end of the day, 10 or 12 hours, you're totally exhausted and wiped. So I started doing a little more digging, and I found out that in New York State, nursery school is also legally exempt from state regulation. And the definition of nursery school is that it has to be less than 3 hours a day. So I thought, well, what if I opened a nursery school in my house instead? And I didn't have to work 10-hour days, but I could take more kids, but I could work from 9 to 11:30 every day or 9 to 11:45. So I did that. And I ran my nursery school for about 8 years. It was close to a decade out of my home, and I loved it. And I used an approach called Reggio, Emilia, which came out of Italy post World War II. And it was a group of educators who came together and said, how can we begin to teach our children in a way that will help them to develop the critical thinking skills in the backbone to prevent fascism? And that was the birth of this particular approach in education. And it's now widely considered to be the best early childhood educational approach in the world. And another thing I love about it is that they don't train you and charge you money and make you go a certain way in order to use their approach. What they say is the Reggio Emilia approach is specific to our culture and our local community. So you cannot be a Reggio Emilia school because you don't live in Reggio Emilia and you're not our community. But anybody can be Reggio Emilia inspired. And that means that you take inspiration from our approach and you put your own flavor into it, and you look at your local community and you build it that way. And I loved that, as opposed to, Montessori has some great ideas. Steiner, Waldorf has some great ideas, but they're very tightly controlled. You have to be trained a certain way. You have to do it a certain way. And I loved the freedom with Reggio. So I opened a Reggio-inspired nursery school. And I was also at the same time deciding to homeschool my own kids. And I was drawn, like some of these other moms, to unschooling. And so I watched all 3 of my children learn to read with 0 direct instruction. I watched them evolve complicated mathematical principles with 0 direct instruction, with play, conversation, resources, and materials, but no direct instruction at all, no workbooks, nothing like that. And so to watch this unfold and to see how amazing kids are innately when they're supported rather than directed was really eye-opening for me. And at a certain point, I remember thinking, is anarchism basically unschooling for adults? And then I was like, why do I trust kids more than I trust other adults? That doesn't make a lot of sense. If I think kids are capable of these things, why would I think that adults need to be coerced or controlled or directed? That's not real consistent of me. So I kind of sat with that for a while. And at a certain point, I was not deep into the philosophy. I was a huge reader for most of my life, but in my 40s, I stopped doing as much reading and research, and I really started tuning into my intuition and my gut. And so I think the final cog clicking into place in the old brain was when I realized if slavery is wrong on a big scale, then little bit of slavery can't be right. You can't say big slavery is bad, but a little bit of slavery is cool. That's not consistent. It doesn't make sense. So at a certain point, that just sort of clicked, like, no, it's always wrong. If it's wrong when it's big, it's wrong when it's small. It's wrong across the board. It's just ethically indefensible. And I can't align myself with something that I find ethically indefensible. So it was a combination of unschooling and being a parent and then being a business owner. And then I closed my nursery school when my youngest child was 4. Because I had 3 kids and they were older, and I loved it. I still miss it. I'll probably reopen it when my kids are gone. But having all these toddlers come to my house, my older kids were like, we're over it. We want to go do other things. We want to join co-ops. We want to be around older kids. So I stopped doing the nursery school, and I was just home with my kids for a year or 2. And then the pandemic hit. And there was nothing going on for homeschool kids in my area. Everything was absolutely shut down. My daughter couldn't go to ballet anymore. My kids couldn't go to swim lessons. Everything that they had done as homeschoolers was gone. And in fall of 2020, actually it was spring when I found out about the program, but in fall I enrolled them in a program that was meeting for homeschool kids 2 days a week. And it was based on the hero's journey and about kids defining their own learning and really approaching it in the way that they wanted to and demonstrating their learning in ways that were meaningful. So my kids went to that program for a year. And at the end of that year, the owners of the school left New York because the restrictions were too much. And myself and a number of other parents whose kids were attending this program said, we don't want our kids to learn this. And the government restrictions due to COVID are draconian, and we don't want to deal with those at all. So we kind of started like an underground group the year of 2021, 2022. For our kids, we did a K-8. We met in somebody's house. It was completely voluntary, no money exchanged hands. So we did that for a year. And it was myself and 2 other women who stayed there all day with the kids and did the actual instruction and the work. The other parents dropped their kids off. So at the end of that year, the woman whose house we were meeting in said, well, I can't offer my house again next year. We're trying to put it on the market. We're going to leave the state. I just can't, host. And I had no intention of opening another business whatsoever. And one of the other moms that I met with called me in on August 1st and said, I found a church and they're offering us rent that is really impossible to pass up. You got to come see this space and do it. So myself and 2 other women, 2 other moms, the 3 of us who had run it in the people's home went and looked at the church, and we were just like, all right, I think we have to make this. I think we got to do this here at a church and pay rent. We'll have all the parents chip in and we'll pay the rent. And then the church guy was like, you need to have liability insurance. So we're like, okay. So we called all around, and then that same woman is like, I found somebody that's going to give us insurance for 1/10 of what everybody else is charging. Literally 1/10. We got to do this. So I'm like, okay. So we call up the insurance people, and they're like, yeah, we can do it, but we can't give liability insurance to a group of homeschooling moms. You have to be a business in order to purchase this insurance. And the other 2 women were like, I'm not opening a business. I don't want that level of responsibility. I don't want to do it. And I said, all right, listen, I already opened a business working with kids, and I did it by looking very closely at the laws in my state and finding loopholes. So in the regulatory statutes. So I'm going to go go back to town. I'm going to go right back into those regulatory statutes. I'm going to go into the law. I'm going to dig around. If we can find a loophole, we're opening the business. If we can't find a loophole and we have to answer to government regulations, we're not opening the business. So I went digging and found a loophole for K-8. You can teach classes in New York State without government regulations. So I said, all right, this is how we're going to structure it so that we are free of government regulations. And we found that space on August 1st, and we opened the doors and began our school on mid-September, 6 weeks from the idea to the grand opening. In our first meeting that we did entirely word of mouth, we got enough clients to pay all our expenses. So, and then by January, we met our goal of how many kids we wanted. So we're running that program this year. Again, focused on critical thinking skills. We have a maker space where the kids get to spend the afternoon making art that relate to the concepts that we learn about, and they have the freedom to create what they want to create in order to demonstrate their learning in their own way. And since then, I've really become a proponent of get out there and do it. You know, don't complain, don't yell, don't fuss, don't get on the internet yelling about stuff all the time and fighting with people. Get out there and make something happen. And so this is my second program that I'm running for children. I don't know, once my kids are grown, I'd go back to the toddlers because that's my favorite age. I love little kids, but I'm having a lot of fun with this as well. And it sort of became something. I was always a person who was like, I don't like to just believe things. I need to live them. I need to align with them. If I can't align with it, if I can't live it, what is the purpose of calling it a belief? It's not really a belief to me. So that's been my whole thing is entrepreneurship and peaceful parenting, unschooling, and working with children and allowing them to learn. You know, I don't like the idea of tabula rasa, that kids are born as a blank slate and they don't have anything to offer. If that were true, then every single child who was presented with the same information and material would learn in the same way, and they would have the same results and they would have the same outcomes. But we see that that doesn't happen, that kids interpret information very differently. People learn differently. People have different interests that they care about. Some people don't care about certain things and they're not going to learn it because it's not important to them. So watching that unfold in children has been really, really inspiring and meaningful to me. And that's what I hope to continue to do, is to work with kids and families to build small communities where we have alternatives to things like public education. And I want to get out there and say, what's the market niche? What are people looking for? What do people want? And then, okay, how does that align with what I have to offer? And then bring that together and create those communities. And so that's been my approach to anarchism. It's not been philosophical, really. It's been practical and on the ground. And that's what I can bring to the discussion. You're on mute still, I think. You got to hit the unmute because we can't hear you.
Oh, there we go. Sorry, it was a little swivel to the other side. Yeah, I've just been listening to you guys, and oh my gosh, we have a lot of similar backgrounds, and it's just really great to hear. You know, you guys. It's like I definitely have to admit I was a little intimidated to come on here, but it's like, wow, we have very similar stories, and it's just you guys are so amazing. Yeah, I just want to say that first. But anyway, so I am Casey. I don't know all of you, but I know a few of you. And I guess my starting of anarchy, I actually grew up in a, I don't want to say it was kind of an anarchist household a little bit. My grandmother, I lived with my grandparents growing up in Ashburnham, Massachusetts. And my grandparents were kind of anarchists, I guess in the term, but I don't know if they ever really referred to themselves as that, but it's what they were. We grew up with no TV. I wasn't really allowed to watch it because it was crap. My grandfather had bell jars of nitroglycerin in the garage. I don't know, to me this was normal, but apparently it's not normal in other people's houses, but yes. And I spent a lot of time reading. It was just, I grew up with a lot of literature in my house because that's what I had to do. If not playing outside, I lived in the woods. So I was a little woodling wild child. and I just read, and that's what I did. And I was not raised with religion, which I really liked doing in my own aspects when I became a parent too, because it just minds are like a sponge. It's good when they're older to get more perspective on what they want to do. You don't want to. I really am against raising children with with the exception of very like specifically like do no harm but take no shit. That was always my more of my upbringing, I guess. Because I grew up in it was very self-reliant. We fixed everything ourselves. Yeah. But when my mother was actually my mother was a Democrat, which was weird in my household because they looked at her like, why do you believe in government? You were raised in, but I ended up, when I became 18, I sort of, also being in Massachusetts, unfortunately, I'm in a very liberal state. So when I went and registered to vote myself, and ended up becoming a Democrat, and I met my Democrat husband at the time, which I regret on so many levels. But one of the things that was like, well, I'm a compassionate person. I want to fight. I don't like people getting stepped on, because I'm really like, hey, no. I like to help people. And so it just seemed like at the time that was what I wanted to do and believe in. But also coming from a family of journalists, I was really into knowledge. I just read. I like to write. And I ended up, as the years went on, married to him. He was actually, I guess it was sort of around the time of Standing Rock. I had decided that was enough, especially growing up my grandmother was Native American, and I just, growing up with that aspect, I was like, this is not okay. What is going on? Why is nobody helping them? Why are all these things happening? What's going on? And just I was joining groups and just getting like really pissed off. And I ended up meeting this guy, which I know some of you know. His name is Yona. He's very, very sweet individual who ended up like really giving me some advice on because I had only as my ex-husband, he ended up he was going more towards the communist side, I guess. And that was really the only anarchy perspective I had. And I'm like, I don't really, him and I weren't getting along at the time. And it was just, I don't want to be a communist, but, I didn't like what that was. And he had me join all these like snuggly wuggly socialists. My God, I don't know. This is the most horrible thing. I got to learn what a Stalinist was, and that was horrifying. But yet, I just started doing all this research. I'm like, there has to be some other form of anarchy. Anarchy is not communism. It doesn't make any sense. It's it's the government. Sorry, I don't mean to do all the but but yeah, so I started researching different types. I'm like, there has to be something else. And then when I met Yona, he was like, well, I'm an ANCAP. And I'm like, what the hell's an ANCAP? And, he explained to me, and I'm like, okay. And I'm like, but you don't seem like a Republican. He's like, I'm not a Republican. I'm an ANCAP. And so I was like, okay. But he really gave me a lot of advice. And I started really, I guess, stemming towards that way. Originally, I remember trying to define myself as a mutualist because I was like, well, it's kind of close to being a Democrat because I really like to help people. But at the same time, it's not really what I want to do either. So I ended up doing more research and talking to more people, joining more groups. I ended up discovering Charlie Yurkowski, who was also a great influence, and I talked with her a lot. Actually, her and I get along very well, and started leaning towards more voluntarism. And then I really just wanted to just divulge, especially when I got divorced. I became very, I wanted to be independent. I don't want to be, dependent on anyone else, because in my marriage at the time, my ex-husband had me very dependent on him. So I got this like whole sense of like liberty and freedom when he and I got divorced, and it was great. I was like, okay, I can actually do things myself again. And it was like I was trying to remember who I was when I was younger, like because of the influence I had, that I should never depend on anyone else. And I really just kind of blossomed. But yes, I really, I started getting more into writing. I became my own person again. I actually have a couple series that I've written. One of them, I wrote an Anarchist Revolution series, because one of the things I remember in asking all my questions, because when you're first getting into anarchism, you have like, okay, well, what happens if this happens? What happens? What do we do? And I decided to write a series about what happens if someone would actually like go and like try to like fight back against the government. And it was really fun to write. I had to interview lots of different. I got to meet trans anarchists and all these different. I got to really see a different side of some people, but it was really neat getting individualists and just all sorts of different types. And I put them all in my book. I wanted to make sure I depicted them as what they really were, especially voluntarianists and ANCAPs. And it was just, I love to write. Writing is really my thing. But yes, I ended up making my own page as well, Shield Maiden of Liberty, which I haven't been posting on much lately, but I have a couple people on it too that help out with it. But for the most part, what I'd like to do is write more books, because I really do like the philosophy. The philosophy part was always kind of my thing, because I like to read, and write. I think that's it.
All right, so I'm Alexis. Some of you guys know me as Minxie. How I became an anarchist is kind of like a fairly long story, because I don't know, like I grew up in a military family, but it was like a very paranoid military, like especially once my parents got out. And basically from the get-go, like I've always been the black sheep, always questioning everything, like, which was like, I don't know, I got from my parents, which is ironic. But yeah, so, and it kind of started like, I don't know, I get called a contrarian all the time. It's kind of funny, but I don't think I am. I just question everything. It started out, I got kicked out of church at like Sunday school. So this started at like a very young age. I remember like questioning the like nun, and because I don't even remember the story, but it was like some story about like this, Job. Yeah, it's the story of fucking Job. And I was like questioning why God would fucking like, basically torture his like most loyal follower and stuff like that. Like none of that stuff ever made sense to me. And I was always told, oh, well, you just gotta believe. And I'm like, fuck that shit. Like, come on. Like, you gotta like show me, why I should, right? So it started out with that. And then about high school, I was in social studies, and like beginning of social, they run you through like all the systems of government and da. And I remember when we hit anarchism, the definition of anarchism was chaos and destruction and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like sitting there, I'm like, this just isn't right to me. Like I even knew that it wasn't right. So I started down the rabbit hole, basically, reading philosophy and stuff like that. I won't say like I really got into like too much activism, because for me, like, especially being Canadian, like protesting and stuff like that, like it's hard to even get anyone off their fucking ass to like, do shit, let alone like, and most of the so-called anarchists around here are like fucking ancoms anyway. So like they don't protest anything that ain't fucking worth a damn anyway. So yeah. And plus growing up very conservatively, like I grew up in a heavily conservative neighborhood, KKK in the neighborhood, that type of deal. So like I was very much an odd sheep out growing up. Like I got bullied, all that kind of stuff. Had to learn to like defend myself at like a very young age. And of course, growing up poor, I fucking had to hustle my ass, made all my own money, da. So I've always been a very like independent, self-sufficient person. And that really came from basically growing up in poverty, especially in, rural Alberta, where there is nothing but farmland and, farms and cows and everything. nothing worth of, but so I learned like a lot of valuable skills though. So growing up, like I was always really able to take those skills and like hustle my own money and everything like that. And then I moved down to Lethbridge, found that it was just as conservative as anywhere else and stuff like that, but being bigger, so my real change kind of happened with Anarchist Philosophies. And I know Crystal remembers this because that's actually where we met. Oh my God, that place was that was such a dumpster fire of like, yeah, it was such a dumpster fire. And I really kind of found like, I had like this, I guess, like rosy shaded idea of anarchism before I hit that group. And then to see all the division and stuff that was like ANCAPs fighting ANCOMs and individualists fighting mutualists. And it's like, what the fuck? Like half of my family grew up in Hungary, communist Hungary at that. So for me, I was never really able to get on board with ANCOMism because, well, I'm sorry, my family stood in fucking breadlines. We ain't too keen to fucking start doing that again, and it really made me realize that philosophy is a great ideal. We're all fallacious as people. Like, we can have the best of intentions in the world and we are still fallacious. And so that really, like, I guess opened up my eyes to, starting to make changes, like personal changes in ways that I can. So about 5 years ago, I started my business because I basically just got sick of like working for other people and realizing that why in the fuck can they take like 2 vacations a year? I'm sitting here busting my ass, miserable as fuck, making minimum wage, barely scraping by. And like, if you guys know how Canada is, our fucking cost of living is going like fucking through the roof. Wages aren't going up. And for those of you who argue for $15 an hour, trust me, it don't do shit to your economy. Okay? We've had $15 an hour here for years. Guess what? The only businesses that sink are the bad ones. The ones who are kind of treating their employees like shit to begin with. So I'll leave it at that. And so I decided to start up my own business, got a business partner. 120 grand later, 5 years in, I had my own skateboard, snowboard company. Okay. And was very like stoked on that. We were doing like really great progress. Obviously, though, I picked a horrible business partner and that, I'm in court with him right now over it. But that really shifted my view on individualism a lot more than it did before. Like, it really made me realize that we're all in control of our own destiny. So I will never again let anyone have split at all into my business. Like independently, I don't pay taxes. Like I fucking refuse to. Like I know I get taxed or whatever. Like I have to pay those taxes. If I make a purchase, I get taxed, right? There's nothing you can do about it. You got to pay it at the till. But independently, I haven't done my taxes. Like I maybe do them once every 10 years because I fucking have to. Like that's sort of the system here in Canada. Like do your taxes or you can't fucking do fuck all. Well, the pandemic kind of forced me to. Because with the pandemic, I got shut down for like 6 months out of the fucking whole time. Spent the rest of the time on the road though. It was great. I fucking loved it. Pandemic was like the best time of my fucking life. Like, so I was like stoked about that. Kind of sad that it like ended. I know some of y'all are just like, but whatever. I fucking loved it. I had a blast. I had like so much freedom to do whatever. So much free time. So yeah, with this past year, like, because so much of that bit, like so much of my business and stuff, like took up a lot of my life. And honestly, like, as in like, oh my God, this is so fucking, oh, I had written down a whole bunch of stuff, but whatever. All right. So yeah, I guess with my views on anarchism and stuff like that, like I'm very much of like grassroots person. I believe that, you know, everyone should have their individual freedom, but you are accountable for your actions. You know, that is just the ripple effect. What you do, the cause and effect that you put out in the world has an effect. You know, even down to our energies. Like I try to, you know, especially this last year and everything, like, you know, basically kicking my ass. I had to learn to, you know, vibrate at a higher frequency than, you know, the factors around me in my environment, especially that, like, you know, and I think that's super important that, especially as anarchists, that we really drive home the point of accountability. And I think that's what I even see it in a lot of like the subgroups, you know, accountability seems to be like long gone. You know, everyone's so willing to blame other people for their issues and not put up the mirror and take a real hard look at themselves and say, what am I doing to make my situation worse? What can I do to make it better? And I think that's really something that is like inherent in our foundation as anarchists, you know, do as you will, but, you know, make sure that you're putting something out there that's worth of value. Because, you know what, we have 80 years. Most people have 80 years on this planet, if that. What are you going to spend those 80 years doing? Oppressing other people, voting for a douche or a turd, because really those are your two options. Like, let's face it, our system is broken. Across the world, we're seeing it. I see it for Americans all the time. Like, oh my God, I feel so bad for you guys sometimes. Like, holy crap. But it's the same in Canada though too. Like we have our flaws just as bad. Like, come on. Like legalizing weed was pretty fucking cool. It's cool to not get arrested. You know, I can walk down the street and smoke a joint, but fucking Trudeau only got the vote because of the fucking stoners. And legalization was probably one of the worst things for us because now you have a ton of garbage weed, all sprayed down with chemicals. Like they've taken an industry and literally turned it into the tobacco industry. In a weird sense of the way. Like if you look at our regulations, even just to like get a license and stuff like that, like you have to jump through hoops to grow, you know, to help open up your own business in the weed industry. So like I won't even fucking like touch that. I still go to my dealer, fucking love my dealer. Best shit in the world, low weed. And that's the other thing. All legalization has done is also fueled our black market too, because you got a bunch of newbies smoking all this like brand new weed that they can get in the stores, not realizing that it's garbage. And while you're smoking, like seriously, if I sit there and I'm smoking my joint and I'm coughing my lungs out, like my dealer shit doesn't do that to me. So what the fuck are they spraying in there? It's crazy. And not to mention too, like on the other hand of it, our restrictions have been fucking crazy. I don't know if you guys know about the recent bill that they tried passing with her new gun laws, kind of like the giant gun grab. I don't remember the bill, but it has now been pulled off the table because, well, it was going to essentially pull away all hunting rifles and such like that and really hit the Indigenous community here. You know, because, well, hunting is a very much an essential part of Canadian life. It is very much like I'm a hunter myself. I love hunting. It is with food costs, like why people aren't hunting and growing their own food to me is like crazy to me at this point. Unfortunately, I live in a city, so it ain't like I can just, you know, go out and shoot my gun anywhere. But, you know, so it's crazy to like, as a Canadian, especially like, you guys have a lot of freedoms. I love the idea that you can like go down to a fucking, you know, gun range there, hop in a tank and like blow something up. That is like my fucking ideal dream to do. So I hope next time I come down to the States, that's like on my list to do, but we'll see. And yeah, so, but on the other hand too, like you guys are fucking crazy with the way you guys view guns. Holy fuck. Like growing up, I grew up in a fucking farm. A gun is a tool, you know? It is. I learned how to shoot gophers by the, you know, 8 years old. I was shooting gophers in a field. But I definitely knew about gun safety. You know, and I remember times of just like, you know, sitting at the table with my grandpa cleaning his gun, sitting there smoking out of his pipe, even though my mom fucking hated it. And she used to like rant and rave about it, but it was my grandpa. So, you know, who's going to say no to grandpa? No one. Grandpa pole, right? So like I grew up in a very like conservative, like, but like very paranoid household too. So my whole view on guns, and especially in the States, like I believe that you guys have a lot of fucking mentally ill people down there. And none of these gun issues are going to be fixed until the mental health system is fixed. And it's the same issue in Canada too. Like the amount of people that we have sitting in our prison system that really shouldn't be there because they have mental issues, bipolar, whatever, shouldn't be there. What is it going to do? It just exacerbates their problem. They get put on medication that zombifies them to the point that they don't even function as normal people. You know, we've gone from lobotomizing people to essentially just chemically lobotomizing them. And, you know, so I think there's huge flaws in the system. And that's why at this point, like, I don't even, like, as a ground roots, I don't vote. I don't do any of that. My whole goal in life is to get my little plot of land. I know some of you guys, like, typical fucking, like, move out in the middle of butt fuck nowhere, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, no, that's me. Yeah. I want to have my goats, have my, you know, chickens, live in the middle of nowhere, you know, and hopefully with this new company that I started, have something to pass on. You know, I don't have kids, but I work with kids. And to me, that's like one of the biggest things that I feel that I can contribute to the world and stuff like that. Like, I don't push anarchism on my kids. You know, they know who I am. But you know, I don't push that philosophy. I just try to teach them to elevate themselves. You know, and skateboarding, snowboarding is one of the best things for that. And actually, it was a funny story on how I even started the company. Okay. So I'm 6 foot tall. You want to know how hard it is to find snow gear, any of that stuff that fits a female who's 6 foot tall? Practically impossible in an industry that, you know, caters to 5'4" blonde chicks that weigh like 120 pounds. So that was sort of like a huge motivating factor in me starting the company. And plus, like, I instantly fell in love with snowboarding. The first time I went out, I fell in love with snowboarding. Like, I eat shit all the time. I'm not good at it. I'm getting better, but I eat shit all the time. And like, just the love and passion that I see like people in the industry have, you know, and especially the stoke that comes from passing it on to the younger generation. You know, like, all the money in my business right now, I put it myself. I work, I try to pay my bills. All my other money goes into my business. I don't spend money on myself, basically. And that's because I really want to teach these kids that hard work, like the drive that you put into your business is what you're going to get out of it. You know, 5 years ago, I was into shops and stuff like that. And I firmly believe that I'll do that again. You know? But that's part of being an anarchist. It's how you pick yourself back up and fucking carry on, you know? It's about seeing yourself as, you know, more than what the system sees you as, which is basically nothing more than a number. Like, I know the odds of people in my area. I grew up in poverty. Statistically, I should be in jail. I beat those odds. Statistically, I should have been a teenage mom. I beat those odds. Statistically, I should be a heavy drug user, and aside from weed and mushrooms, I don't really fucking need to touch drugs. So, like, you know, that I think that's where I was really blessed growing up with the mindset that I had, is that I was always able to beat those odds. And so, yeah. And as far as how my community is, well, again, as I stated, it's basically nothing but a bunch of ANCOMs, especially in Lethbridge, because we have such a heavy righty, like, you know, like, if you guys know anything about Alberta, like, we have some pretty conservative fucking shit here. Like, hell, we have like what is the Wild Rose Party, which is basically as conservative as you can get. Like, it is ridiculous what they want to do, you know? And which is, you know, whatever. But their whole idea of even just like, oh, well, women should be at home in the kitchen, da, 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 da. How many fucking people can afford that shit? Like, honestly, like, how many of us can sit here and afford to like have your spouse sit at home and, you know, do whatever and you pay the bills? Not a thing. That is a dream of like the middle and upper class, so I really, waking up to the psyops and stuff like that, especially that are pushed on us with like left-right division, has been like one of the biggest things I really try to push against, especially as an anarchist, like, because you even see it in the anarchist community, like, and I think it's ridiculous to see all these like people fight over this petty shit that doesn't matter. Fighting over skin color. Like, you know what? Poor is poor. If you're fucking poor, you're poor. It don't matter if you're black, white, green, orange, whatever. We're all in the same boat. So we should be passing it on how, because we don't change minds by petty fighting like this. And I think this is a huge reason why, especially I took a step back from, like, especially a lot of the online stuff. Like I know for the past like little while, I've really not been super active, but business shit aside, it really opened my eyes to, start showing, less talky, don't knock other people's crowns down, which is what I saw a lot of, especially in Anarchist Philosophies, which is like an amazing thing for this group. Like, not once have I seen any of us girls like knock each other down or, do any of that sort. Like, holy fuck, like all these men who sit here and say, oh, well, women can't do shit. Women can't do blah, 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 blah. They can't get along. I'm sorry, but when was the last time any of us had a fight? No, never. Not once. Not in the how many years that this has been active? So I think it's great that, us as a collective are able to really, really change and alter the view of like how people view us. Because like we see from the outside in all the time, and sometimes we get caught up in our own petty shit and whatever, but to all of us to be able to unite and, show people what we are really about is, I think, a very beautiful thing. We all are very different people, and we all don't agree on the same shit, but we all have similar stories, which I think was amazing because, like, especially listening to some of you, I could actually relate to a lot of you guys on different levels from like different aspects of my life, which is like not anything to really get into. It's a whole like long ass story. We are unicorns. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the other thing. I think we're like definitely unicorns for sure. And I think that's a huge intimidating factor for, a lot of people because we don't stay silent. And it has been difficult my whole life not staying silent. Every time I've stepped up, I've always had someone try to like fight me down. And I'm sure it's with every single woman here. You always have someone trying to kick you down. But we've always gotten back up. And I think that's a beautiful thing.